Hi, this is Paul Christopher Hoppy, aka Giant Buddha. I'm back with Hand of the Day number 3 for PokerIsASkill.com. This is a Pot Limit Omaha hand, and that is a game that I would say I am learning. I am definitely not an expert at this game. I'm skeptical whether anyone is at this point. Sometimes I get the feeling that the best Omaha players still don't have a very deep understanding of the game, or at least a lot of good winning players don't have a deep understanding of the game relative to, say, where a lot of the best, say, limit hold'em players are, or even no limit hold'em players. And so that's really an opportunity, the way I see it. There's a lot of upside in the game. There are a lot of weaker players who play it because it's fun, because you get so many cards, and there are also a lot of good players who win, but maybe there's a lot of room for growth. So let's get to the hand. So here I have a marginal hand on the button, and it's going to fold around to me, I believe. And I open for a min raise, which is what I typically do. I don't know whether it's good or not. It's what I typically do in no limit as well. So we'll just go with that for now. And the small blind cold calls and the big blind folds. Now, it should be noted that the big blind may be a weaker player, so that might be why the small blind is cold calling some hands. That also just might be a decent strategy. Against a min raise, it's pretty cheap to get in there. So, you see the stats 27-20. So I think that's in the realm of good players. It might be a little bit of a wide spread between VPIP and PFR, but I feel like it's probably okay. Also, you can see that he 3-bets 6% of his hands, so that's not an insignificant amount. So on the flop, he just checks. I have the nuts. I bet $3 into five. Maybe I should go a little bit larger. The thing is there's a lot of bad turn cards. I can also be drawing, well, not drawing, but essentially drawing to bricks coming on the turn and river and being free rolled by a better queen jack. A queen jack that happens to have some clubs in it. My queen of clubs is a bit of a blocker to a lot of his potential club draws. He can have nut flush draws, and he can have some other uh, weaker draws, but it's a jack high seems less likely unless it's a like a jack 8 or whatever, and then 9-8. That's about it. He's not going to have jack 4 probably when he cold calls here. Unless he has like jack 4-4 or something like that. So I'm thinking he can have some flush draws. He could have the straight and be free rolling me, but there's no reason to really think that until he puts some action in. He just calls the flop, so that tells me he could have a flush draw. He could have some marginal hand a lot of the time. I think an ace X, ace 10, something like that. He could maybe have a straight and be waiting to see for a safe turn card. Now what happens though is he bets out on the turn what looks like let's see, 840. What percentage of pot is that? That's not 80%. That's some, I think that's some weird percentage of the pot. So actually, there's some rake taken, so that this may actually be 75% or 80% of whatever the actual remaining pot is at the moment. So anyway, the point being that this bet looks sort of like, hey, I've got a flush, and you could certainly interpret it as that, and just go ahead and fold. And if I didn't have the queen of clubs, there's a pretty decent chance I would do that, where he could have ace high flushes, he could have queen high flushes. I doubt he's got a jack high flush and is playing it this way. So right now, basically, he has the nuts, or he has air. And by air, I mean some kind of weak made hand that he's decided to turn into a bluff. Most likely the ace of clubs. So if I didn't have any timing tells, I might just go ahead and fold this. I don't really know. But the way he bet it felt like it was very quick. The four of clubs came out and his chips were in the pot. And with a made flush, he could do that. Although I really kind of feel like when somebody turns the nuts, they think, okay, they start thinking, well, let's just say if I turn the nuts, I'd be thinking, okay, how am I going to get the most money with this hand? What's my opponent going to call me with? Am I going to make a small bet and try and get them to put in, um, kind of like a sucker bet and then make a bigger bet on the river and see if I can get two streets of value? Or am I just going to try and bet big now and see if they'll call me with a queen high flush? And if I think that they're really only going to call me with a queen high flush, then is it better to check raise and let them bet smaller flushes, or maybe get some value on the river? So that thought process is maybe only going to take 3, 4, 5 seconds, but there's going to be a delay, and maybe that's somewhat a function of um, you know me not being a very experienced Pot Limit Omaha player, but at the same time, even in Limit Hold'em, which is the game I'm most comfortable with, I'd turn the nut flush, and in general, in Limit, I'd be thinking, okay, I'm probably going to check raise, but I would spend that moment thinking, okay, do I want to check raise here, or do I want to try and bet 3-bet? And in PLO, you're not going to get a bet 3-bet in with the nuts, unfortunately. If people were raise calling with less than the nut flush here, that would be great, but it seems pretty unlikely, in most games. But so his timing just made me really feel strongly like he had an ace of clubs here. And so then the turn comes, and I call it, right? And then the river is another club, and again, he just pounds out what looks like a little more than 3/4 pot. Maybe it's 80% of whatever the real true pot size is. I don't know. But he put in these like weird numbers just super fast. So it's clearly some kind of button that does a certain percentage of the pot. And it was really the speed with which he did it that made me think, he's not trying to get me to call. When people are trying to get you to call, I mean, yeah, okay, so this is Zoom poker, right? So maybe he's trying to play really fast to get lots of hands, but you try and play really fast to get lots of hands, and then you pick up the nut flush, and when you have the nuts, I don't know, people just so often they think, well, should I do this? Should I do that? And even if he just knows, okay, I'm always betting this, they want to show some hesitation. People do that a lot. So even, that's not to say that he's never going to show up the nut flush here. He's definitely going to show up with a nut flush some of the time. He's never going to show up with the second nut flush because I have the queen of clubs, and I think the third nut flush is pretty unlikely for just the reasons what combinations can he actually hold? Jack 9, Jack 8, maybe Jack 7, and he might not check call the flop with it and then donk and bet big on the river. So all of that said, I think he can turn up with a nut flush. Maybe he can turn up with some other flush. Very unlikely, but we're gonna remove some of those combinations, or some of whatever percentage of the time he would, this action would give him the nut flush. Whatever percentage of the time that he takes this line, he would have the nut flush. We're going to make it less than that because of the timing tell. And that doesn't mean he can't have it, but I'm getting better than 2-1 here. So if he has it less than less than 2/3 of the time, I'm going to have a call. It's what am I getting? I'm getting like 7-3 basically. So that means he needs to be good 70%. So I really only need to be good here 30% of the time to justify a call. And I think that I am. I think he's going to have the ace of clubs and some some just random other 3 cards often enough that I'm going to be able to make a call here. And one last thing that I didn't mention yet is that the river's a 3 of clubs. And that's a 4th club on the board, plus I have a queen in my hand. So that's 5 of the clubs that are dead. So let's give him, the ace of clubs. That's 6 clubs. That leaves 7 clubs left. So he needs one of the 7 clubs. I'm not entirely certain on the math and the combos, but let's just say, can we do it now? There's 42 cards left because we're giving him the ace of clubs, plus there's 5 on the board, 4 in our hand, so that gives 42 cards. He's got to have 1 out of 6 out of those 42, so that's about a 1 in 7 chance. He has 3 chances for it, so 3 and 7. So that's obviously not exact because it's really the actual equation. It's a little more complicated. But let's say about half the time maybe he's going to have a suited ace. That ace, if he has it, is going to be suited up. That's ignoring hand choice, of course. So it's probably a little more than half. But if that's all, then that sounds pretty good. That he's not going to have a suited ace that much more than half the time that he does have that ace. And so I think he's going to have a naked ace bluff here often enough for me to profitably call. I do call, and he turns up with the naked ace bluff. And he did have ace 10, so he had sort of a marginal made hand on the flop where he can check call, and if I check the turn, his hand's usually good, and he might value bet the river. If a jack comes off, he makes the nut straight with the queen, and he can play the ace or the 10. So he's got some outs there. If an ace or a 10 comes off, now he's got a really strong hand. He's got a full house. I mean, not the nuts or anything, but looking pretty good. Plus, he has this ace, which he can run this naked ace bluff with. And so, despite the fact that I called him down here, I kind of like his flop play. I like the idea of calling with a marginal made hand with some outs and then some fake outs. So you can get there sometimes, you can be good sometimes, and other times you're going to have some bluffing options. So I really like my opponent's play here, even though I called down his bluff. But I tanked on both streets. I mean, I really thought hard about it. And so I felt like my turn tank maybe actually made him even more a little bolder on the river, where he knew that I didn't like it. It's not like I snap called. Although if I did snap call, he might have just thought, hey, he has a set. So he might have then felt more comfortable on the river getting me off of that when the board didn't pair. So that's it for today. Please post your questions or comments on the website. I'd love to hear from you. This is Paul Christopher Hoppe for pokersaskill.com. Thanks for watching.